Hello everyone, Frost here. Welcome back to another classic WoW video. This is the 4th episode from the Profession Overview series. Previously we talked about Alchemy, how to make gold early game, and from where to obtain most of the rare money making recipes. Today we're going to cover engineering in its glory, looking at both specializations in order to figure out which one is more suitable for your playstyle. Also, we're going to look at some rare and iconic gadgets and slightly touch on a couple of ways to make gold with this skill. Without further ado, let's explore. Engineers take advantage of their inventiveness to create an immense and occasionally random variety of helpful items. By tinkering ceaselessly and tolerating malfunction and misfires, an engineer can make utterly unique objects. Sight-enhancing gadgets, potent guns, robot pets, a variety of bombs, grenades, and many unusual trinkets. Successful engineers use their inventions to solve problems and make life easier, faster, better for themselves and their companions. It's very common for engineers to also specialize in mining. The metals and ores they procure serve as building materials for their inventions. Out of the primary professions, engineering has always been the weirdest one. It feels like Blizzard took every crazy idea they could think of and made a schematic out of it. Apparently nothing was off the table. The resulting profession has huge diversity and utility. Most importantly, engineering is heck of a lot of fun. As you progress in your studies as an engineer, you'll be given an opportunity to choose a specialization. After completing a unique quest, you can specialize in either Goblin or Gnomish schools of engineering. Each school specializes in crafting unique items, some of which aren't available to the opposing style of craftsmanship. On the left side of the screen we have Gnomish engineering, and on the right side we have Goblin engineering. On the top of the screen you can see items that are either bind on pickup or requires Gnomish or Goblin to use. On the bottom we have some of the schematics that are usable by both specializations, but they have to be crafted by one or another. The first important gadget we see on the Gnomish side is the Battle Chicken, a trinket that will summon a mechanical chicken. At a first glance it does not seem to do any damage unless the chicken goes berserk, and during the enraged state the damage is noticeable. But this is not why this pet shines. On the 1.5 minute duration that the pet will be up to aid you, the chicken will have a chance to battle squawk, unleashing a buff that increases the melee attack speed by 5% for 5 minutes, not only for you, but for your entire group, making this trinket a must-have in hardcore raiding guilds for the melee groups. A very good trinket to have right here. The second important gadget from Gnomish is the Death Ray, a trinket that will release an insane amount of burst damage upon release, sometimes killing an enemy in one shot. Some people say that the trinket scales with the engineering skill, but apparently the formula behind this gadget is more complicated and it might scale with your level. The RNG included goes beyond the chance to crit and sometimes gives you a chance to do double damage, meaning that the damage could be anywhere from 1000 to maybe 8000 on a lucky double damage crit, which obviously will occur very rare. Nevertheless, this is something you might want to have. On the Goblin side you have the Bomb Dispenser, a trinket that is pretty underrated. Essentially this is an unlimited source of bombs. Instead of having to constantly gather materials and make bombs over and over again, costing you a great deal of fortune and raw materials, this device can create a new bomb every 30 minutes free of charge. On the long run, this can save you money and be very useful both in PvP and PvE. Goblin Construction Helmet will be useful for a while in Molten Core and Onyxia for fire resistance, and the On-Use Absorb buff can keep you alive on a Ragnaros fight for example, which can lead to a progression kill. Anyway, the helm will serve for a different purpose since it's used as a reagent in crafting the Goblin Rocket Helmet. Most people will choose to go Gnomish engineering, leaving part of the market open for business as a Goblin engineer. I think we're doing an injustice to Goblin engineering so far, since we haven't discussed about the Sapper Charges and the Goblin Mortar. Sapper Charges are a great way to get rogues out of stealth or cause some nasty AoE damage in PvE. The mortar can also cause nasty AoE damage. On top of this, stun everything in a 5-yard radius for 3 seconds. This will have use in both PvP and PvE. At this point you'll be like, yeah Frost, but these are bind on equip and you can ask a goblin to make them for you. And while that is true, do you really want to look for a goblin engineer each time you need the sappers? Do you want to build a new mortar trinket each time the 6 charges are consumed? It's far more convenient to be able to craft your own sapper charges, and it's way more cheaper to reload your mortar instead of creating a new one. Not only that, but you will be able to make some gold out of this on the long run. The transporter trinkets can serve as a hint in choosing Gnomish or Goblin engineering, because even if these items are BOE, they require a specialization to use. The question is, where do you want to port more often, Gatchazan or Everlook? We'll talk more about this later on. Normally the basic rule would be melee DPS goes for Gnomish, range DPS goes for Goblin. Now, if you choose to have engineering for the whole iteration of vanilla, the hardcore strategy is to get Gnomish, craft all the bind on pickup and unique stuff, then abandon engineering and relearn it as Goblin. This means you'll have the usable stuff from Gnomish, while being able to craft the consumables from the Goblin. Once you choose your path, it doesn't really matter anymore, because all the other recipes are drops available to both paths, so it doesn't make much of a difference. Now that we covered the path of an engineer, let's look at some notable schematics. Grenades. If you tell someone that you're going to roll engineering, they'll be like, oh, grenades, nice. Well, to be honest, this skill is mostly known by the use of grenades. And they're just too good. Imagine them as an extra 31 point talent to use in both PvP and PvE. But let's not go too far with this, as engineering has way more to offer. Grenades can be used in a variety of situations. Stopping an enemy from kiting you, deal an extra amount of damage, predict and cancel incoming crowd control, and so on. Throwing your grenades requires a bit of practice, but eventually you'll master the art of throwing. Most common will be the iron grenade, since they're cheap to make, but some rich people will choose the thorium ones because that extra chunk of damage can be the difference between a win or a corpse run. Field Repair Bot 74A. Looted from an object deep within the Blackrock depths, the repair bot is an essential raiding tool in vanilla. Without such a bot, the only other option is for everyone to heart out, repair back in town, and reassemble. It's also a handy appliance when Nefarian breaks your hunter's weapons. The bots are consumable and expensive to make, but this gives you the opportunity to become the hero for one raid or dungeon after wiping over and over. The morale is down. Popping a repair bot will bring the smiles back to people's faces, a price that I would gladly pay. Ultra Flash Shadow Reflector. This trinket will increase your chance of winning against a warlock or a shadow priest by at least 50%. On top of the passive 20 shadow resistance, you get to reflect their spells for 5 seconds on a 5-minute cooldown. This works for everything that is shadow, fears, shadow bolts, mind blasts, death coils, and so on. Speaking of reflecting every shadow, when Dragons of Nightmare were first released, it was possible to use this trinket on Emeris, reflecting the Corruption of Earth ability. Essentially, once you got him to 75%, you could have reflected his own ability and kill him immediately. This was obviously patched the very next week. The schematic will be a bit hard to acquire early game, as this drops from the Crimson Inquisitor in Strat Scarlet side. The drop chance is under 4% and the number of the mobs is limited. The recipe will be very sought after and very valuable, as crafting this for other engineers will result in big fees, thus making you some decent amount of gold. Hyper Radiant Flame Reflector, a perfect trinket for Molten Core and other fire-based raids where fire resistance is required. Reflecting a big spell feels great in PvE, and it's hilarious in PvP because who does not want to see a Presence of Mind Pyroblast mage dying to his own misfortune? Or maybe a warlock that got a bit older trying to cast a soulfire. Not to mention the elemental spec mages, which seem to be a huge problem in PvP scenarios. The schematic drops with a 6% chance from Solokar Flamerat in Upper Blackrock Spire, a boss that is usually skipped by most groups for unknown reasons. Maybe Leroy Jenkins has something to do with this. Nevertheless, get good at begging because you'll want to beg your group to kill this boss. Getting these schematics early game will make you some decent amount of gold from the crafting fees, same as the Shadow Reflector. And if by any chance you're watching this video and you're not an engineer, don't try to ninja this because it will ruin your reputation. Gyrofreeze Ice Reflector. On a fresh server experience, frost mages are so abundant, they appear like mushrooms after rain. Having this will definitely make your life easier in PvP. This also has the most frost resistance on a trinket slot, which makes it viable for Naxxrama's frost resistance gear. Also, you can equip 2 of these for a combined 30 frost resistance on the trinket slots alone. Keep in mind that they share cooldown. You can purchase the recipe from Fizzbolt in Everlook. Ultra Safe Transporter Gatsuzan and Dimensional Reaper Everlook. Quests in Vanilla will send you all over the world. With an hour cooldown on Hearthstones, the teleports allows you to skip a lot of travel time. That if you survive the journey. The teleporters aren't great when it comes to the Z-axis, and helpless engineers would sometimes find themselves teleported 1,000 feet above the ground. This is where the parachute cloak comes in handy. Make sure to equip it before teleporting for a slower and less deathy journey to the ground. The Rocket Boots. These come in both Gnomish and Goblin varieties, with different malfunctions. The Gnomish kind will send you running around randomly as if feared. The Goblin version would explode exactly as advertised and destroy the boots in the process. Fortunately, you could salvage some Scorch boots for parts, it's not a total loss. Great to have in lots of PvP scenarios, trying to cap the Warsong Gulch flag, chasing down a wounded enemy, or trying to get away from an enraged player, and so on. Force Reactive Disc. One of the first raid drop schematic implemented. The disc is a great tanking shield despite its bad habit of zapping away crowd control debuffs. Paladins and maybe shamans would love to get their hands on it. Also has one of the best shield models in game, complete with animated gears. Getting this recipe will result in crafting fees. Goblin Rocket Helmet. One of the greatest gadgets from engineering. Craft this as soon as possible, and if you can afford a Libran enchant, just do it. Basically, the helm will charge on the selected opponent, making him useless for 30 seconds. The charge is very nice as this can climb up hills that you wouldn't normally be able to climb, such as the cliffs in Warsong Gulch graveyards. This opens possibilities for 1v2 scenarios or even 1v3 if you're a rogue, as you could sap one target, immediately use the rocket helm on the second target, and kill the mind-boggled third target. You'll be known as the double sap rogue. Mind Control Cap. Never mind what I've said about the rocket helmet. This is the best 1v2 gadget. When using on the selected player, he will become your pet for 20 seconds. A controllable pet with all 6 behavior buttons. Then, the artificial intelligence kicks in, which tends to use the big cooldown abilities first. Great fun can be acquired with this, and this can be used in both PvP and PvE. The difference is that in PvE, you can actually use mob abilities such as the fire resistance buff from the Orcs in Blackrock Spire or the Crimson Battle Mages in Strat Scarlet. Gnomish Shrink Ray. Yet another ray from the Gnomish collection. This one is BOE, so if you're a goblin, just get a Gnomish to make it for you. On use, the trinket either shrinks or enlarges, removes or adds 250 AP. Sometimes it enlarges or shrinks you and the entire party as well. Usually it will mostly work in your benefit, shrinking the enemy and enlarging you. There are reports for this working on raid bosses, but frankly I don't really remember this. Let me know in the comments if you remember something like this. Arcane Bomb. One of the most expensive engineering consumables out there. Drains mana, deals damage, and silences for 5 seconds. Now, as expensive as these might be, having one of them with you could mean a lot. Let's say for example you're with the guild on the ZG island, getting war buffed and ready for raiding, while silently getting jumped by another guild who's trying to punish you. Throwing an arcane bomb will save your guild from losing the world buffs and will make you the hero for one evening, as this will silence all mages and some healers that are in the radius. Just pray that the attacking guild does not have one as well. Biznix 247 x 128 Accura scope. God bless the dev who named this scope. This item used to affect melee swings and was one of the most sought after enhancements by rogues and warriors. It was nerfed to only ranged attacks and made to be a balanced part of the game. Not only that, but this was taken out of the loot table for a long while until they fixed it for ranged attacks only. So, many engineers that had the pattern before they removed it got to charge the price of their desire, as many servers had only a handful of people with it, thus making engineering the best money-maker profession for few lucky ones. Not sure how this will work in Classic, but if proven the scope works for melee, get it ASAP. World Enlarger. This item was nerfed after a bunch of people from the PvP venture complained because it's stacked with other shrinking effects like Noggenfogger Elixir, making the Warsong Gulch flag nearly invisible to the general player. Gnomes were the size of a large flea. This gadget offers a unique experience. Unfortunately, it's only available to Gnomish engineers as this requires Gnomish to use it. Goblin Jumper Cables XL. Something really nice to have in raids or dungeons because it provides a 50% chance to revive a dead target and avoid a group corpse run. Make sure to use it on a healer, don't revive the tank like I did. Gnomish Cloaking Device. A trinket that gives a free invisibility potion every 60 minutes. Not only that, but this will get you out of combat as well. Combine this with jumper cables and grow in the eyes of your fellow friends. A couple of honorable mentions. Discombobulator Ray transforms the target into a leopard gnome, reducing its melee and spell damage by 40 and its movement speed by 20% for 12 seconds. A nice way to humiliate your opponent. Green Lens, rare cloth helmet with 10 stamina and random stats upon crafting, such as 36 frost power, 55 healing, and so on. Net-O-Matic Projector, netting an enemy in place, unfortunately the backfire is too deadly. Seaphorium Charge offers the possibility to blast locked doors and chests, good to have for Dar Mole doors, Scholomance, and so on. A couple of ways to make gold with engineering on top of the ones we previously discussed regarding the rare recipes are making salt shakers for leatherworkers. In a bizarre attempt to synergize engineering with leatherworking, Blizzard added this item in patch 1.11. The shaker created a salt that could cure rugged hide, and only a leatherworker could use it on a 3-day cooldown. There are a variety of quests that require engineering parts in order to complete. The Warsong Supply quest in Ashenvale will need Deadly Blunderbuss. The Gyro Watt quest in Badlands requires a Gyrochronatum. The Chasing A-Me-01 quest in Ngoro requires a Mithril Casing. Look to the Stars in Duskwood requires Bronze Tube. There will always be demand for these on the auction house, and making them will allow you to make some form of income. Other than that, crafting goblin stuff for Gnomish engineers and vice versa will be viable as well, but the real gold will come from acquiring the rare recipes we previously discussed. Nevertheless, engineering is not necessarily known for being a money-making profession, but if you really want to know, please follow my Rags to Riches series on the channel, as I will discuss more in depth some of the methods. With no doubt in my mind, I can state clearly that engineering is definitely the most fun profession in World of Warcraft. Offers unique advantages that in the end will make you a better player, both in terms of gameplay and player interaction. If you choose to be an engineer, I wish you the best luck in acquiring your rare schematics and outthinking your opponents. But just the simple fact that you choose this profession will not magically make you better at PvP. Engineering has a learning curve and requires some sort of add-ons to assist you. Add-ons such as Trinket menu, item rack, and so on. This will make the skills easier to reach, check their cooldowns, and select whatever is best for a certain situation. In the end, it's all about practice. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed and maybe learned something new. If you did, make sure to drop a like and a comment down below. Let me know if I missed something important from engineering. Also, while you're here, you might want to join my Discord, found in the description of the video. Until next time, stay frosty.